compete with other phones in the... I have feedback. This is going to be annoying if it continues.
We're doing pretty well there for a while. Did I tell you I'm not a professional?
Is this going to be better? No, it's going to be worse. Is that going to be better? Yay! What? Okay, so there's no more feedback. Great.
It's coming from back there.
It's behind you.
She's in the room.
We good?
Now we have to figure out where it's coming from.
Are we good? Yes? Okay. Before I was rudely interrupted by technology, 2010 saw the first iPhones enter Japan, which to be able to compete with other phones, the iPhone had to support emoji. And so Apple implemented it specifically for that region. And eventually the feature flag for this turned up in iPhones in the US. And the story goes, one day somebody found this feature hidden in a custom setting in a third-party app, looked at it and went, huh, I can send a pile of poop to my friends. And thus the Precambrian explosion of emoji started. Every year we get more and more emoji addressing different memes and frequently requested emoji. We start getting backwards compatibility, like the cowboy emoji, which is only there because it was an emoticon in Yahoo Messenger. We start getting different communities putting together proposals and designs like the fortune cookie. Every year, more and more emoji are added as they are approved by the Emoji Subcommittee of the Unicode Consortium. The submission process is open to the public, which means whoever can suggest an emoji, and if the submission is strong enough, they might just get accepted. Like me. I submitted a proposal for the parrot emoji. It is now an actual emoji. Yay! Sorry. And then we start getting more inclusive emoji, like the representation of bionics and more diverse food and animals, and still yet the set is not complete, as we are getting more things that we've been missing the entire time, like the single coin emoji. Again, sorry. The emoji added last year should be on your phones and devices by now, depending on your platform, and the new set of emoji will be determined for this year, later in the year. Current contenders include ginger, maracas, and goose. Thank you. But just because a specific emoji has a specified code point doesn't mean that the emoji itself will look the same on all platforms. For example, these are all 1F99C parrot, but depending on your platform, you're either seeing a scarlet macaw or anything from a Carolina parakeet to possibly a black-winged lovebird to an eclectus parrot or even maybe a sun parakeet. While these are all parrots, they are not the right parrot because none of them look like this parrot. This is Sirocco the kakapo, for which my original parrot emoji submission was based. You also may recognize him as the party parrot. Emoji implementers are under no obligation to use the suggested design in submission documents, so you may end up with these variations. For example, the dumpling emoji is different on nearly every platform, all delicious, but not the original design that the designer intended. But it's not just issues between platforms. Oh no, these issues can be on the same platform for different code points. The landmark case of this, these two emoji, subject to the 2016 paper, Blissfully Happy or Ready to Fight, Varying Interpretations of Emoji from the University of Minnesota. These two emoji are different, but they may not seem like it at first, because before 2015 on iPhones, the only difference between these two code points were the eyes. In the West, we may look to the mouth to work out emotion, smiling, frowning, grimacing. But in Japan, where Unicode emoji originate, particularly in manga, eyes are used to show emotion. So in 2016 on the iPhone, the beaming face with smiling eyes emoji was updated to also have a smiling mouth. Thus, all misinterpretations of emoji were resolved forever. And as the years go on, the emoji representations from different vendors can be updated. The apple emoji from 10 years ago look similar to the emoji you might find today, but are now much more detailed. For instance, the pig now smiles, and the horse has ears. Suffice to say, I am a emoji nerd. I have multiple emoji in the Unicode standard. I have been paid to be published on articles about emoji in various periodicals. And this is all because a few years ago, I started giving talks about emoji. Since 2016, I've given this talk, The Power and Responsibility of Unicode Adoption. It sounds super professional, except that's not the talk title. That's the talk title. The power, lightning bolt emoji, and responsibility, face with cold sweat emoji, of Unicode adoption, sparkle emoji. And the very first time I gave this talk, I ran into problems. This is the acceptance email for the presentation that had the title of the talk just stop. Congratulations, your talk has been selected. Selected talk, the power, lightning bolt, and responsibility. Gets better. Some systems wouldn't even let me submit to the CFP the talk title that I wanted and told me that the problem would be solved soon, which I should hope it's been solved since, because this system, EasyChair, was the CFP system for the 4th International Workshop on Emoji Understanding and Applications in Social Media held last year. Some conferences get it right in some places, but wrong in others. For example, this particular conference, the title displays correctly on the website schedule, but not in the printed schedule. There's just an empty void, but in the AV schedule, you get squares. You'll note the check title note. The session chair for this talk had yet a different printout where she, with consent from myself as the speaker, repeated my talk title verbatim as it appeared on her sheet. So I was introduced to speaking about the power, lightning bolt, and responsibility square of Unicode adoption square. But even better is the digital display that the conference center had outside my talk. It worked. Mostly. You can see the emoji there, but this is a segue into the security part of the talk. I can tell you by looking at this picture that in 2016, the Melbourne Conference Centre just across the river here was running Windows 8.0. And I can tell of that because of this emoji is how the face with cold sweat emoji appears exactly on Windows 8.0, because as older code points are updated to have color actually be able to be visible, actually look like a not hot mess, you can pin down to the minor version the operating system they're associated with. This is particularly obvious in Android because depending on which version you see, you can tell which Android versions are end of life and not getting security patches. But it's not just human misinterpretation. Computers can get all upset about emoji as well. For example, this is the pride emoji. Technically, it's not its own emoji. It is the combination of several emoji. Specifically, the combination of the blank flag emoji, the rainbow emoji, and between the two, a special character known as a zero-width joiner, allegedly pronounced as zwidge. This character is also the hidden point that allows you to add skin tone modifiers to various face and hand emoji. When this functionality was originally added, various platforms had to adapt and start using it, and this caused some fun. For example, if instead of this sequence, you sent the blank flag, the digit 0, and a rainbow to your mate with an iPhone, their phone would do this. This isn't the first, and it won't be the last time that a unique set of characters crash mobile phones. You can hide a lot of non-displayable characters in a message that can be copy and pasted and shared around different mobile phone users that phones will just nope out of. And it's not just emoji. Combinatorics of scripts like Arabic have been reported to cause issues as well. These are just some of the examples of the combinations that have rebooted enough phones to get news coverage. And of course, you can't forget the one most recent version of this kind of fun, Trojan source. While the main vulnerability described is about using control characters to reorder which parts of the code is interpreted at what time, the variant described in this paper is a little bit more old school. This bit of C code, with what appears to be two identical method signatures, isn't, because the capital H is not a capital H. One of these is a Latin capital H, the other one is Cyrillic capital EN. This is not new. Back in 2005, someone registered PayPal.com. This is known as an International Domain Homograph attack, IDN homograph attack. And in an update to this particular website itself, as it was reacquired back by PayPal, it said that it is hoped that this demo assisted with finally getting some traction about this age-old vulnerability that was old in 2005. Since then, we now have Unicode, which allows for the encoding of international domain names within the Latin 1 character set, which means that this PayPal domain looks very obviously not PayPal anymore. And yes, this also means you can encode emoji into domain names. I used to own spoonemoji.ws. I'm a nerd. But the biggest example of all these issues coming together happened a few years ago now, but it is still a super interesting story. That link has a wonderful write-up of the issue, including a link to the LoopConf conference talk, where the lead developer of WordPress spoke about this issue, and a post from the original vulnerability identifier. This is all that CVE 2015-3438. And this problem isn't specific to WordPress, but given it did happen to WordPress, and WordPress powers a significant percentage of websites, it is not too outlandish to say we will now cover how one WordPress fix saved a quarter of the internet from cross-site scripting attacks through emoji. WordPress 4.2, the blog post announcing it, said there is now features for extended character support, noting emoji are now available in WordPress. Huzzah! Back in 2015, this was a huge deal. You could do emoji on WordPress if you just updated your installation. Our users will like that. Let's update our installations. Install updates and get new emoji is actually a really engaging model for making people do system updates. Update and get new emoji. You'll also get critical system updates, but you'll also get new emoji. Update today. Versions prior to this, though, with a particular database setup, were susceptible to cross-site scripting attacks. And I'm going to show you how all this works with a smile, particularly this smile. This is not your average smile. This is code point 1F642, and it is the slightly smiling face. This was introduced back to Unicode in 2014, version 7.0, and it will work for our purposes today. Well, what won't work are other smiling faces. This face won't work. It looks far too pure of heart to participate in such mad hacks. This is the white smiling face emoji style. That FE0F at the end is variant selector 16, which tells the system that if it's possible, please display this character as an emoji. Otherwise, it'll display as text. Another fun fact, if you see a random capital J in serif font in one of your emails, that is because someone is sending you an email from Microsoft Office using the Wingdings font that automatically changed the capital J code point in Wingdings to a smiley face, and everything broke in the translation. I will also note this is the white smiling face. The next character along is the black smiling face. They're called white and black, but it should more properly be called unfilled and filled because it's got the colors in it. So back to this smiling face. This code point starts with a 1F and uses 5 characters in this encoding language to describe it. This means that this is not just one character. If we expand it out, it's actually a multi-byte character, which is a critical part of getting this hack working. Let me show you. Say you're on a blog and you're going to post a lovely comment like a nice person. And you type up your comment. It's such a happy comment. You are engaging with the author, providing positive feedback for their work. All good. And for this particular setup, you'll end up posting this. This is such a great post. Wait, where's the rest of that comment I entered? Gosh, I should go back and make sure it's entered. Let's just complete the rest of that script tag and finish my comment. Let's make sure we get that quote in there. And we posted it. Great. This is such a great post. I like snacks. Me too. But if we mouse over that page, we've successfully injected JavaScript. Let's look at what went wrong. This is what the rendered page could look like. You'll notice copious amounts of HTML that aren't being syntax highlighted, but you'll also note the lack of smiling face we originally entered. A lot of websites will have client-side data validation that will disallow script tags and other things, you know, like it's 1997. But we can get past some of those by submitting our data in multiple comments. And in this example, we're taking advantage of the use of different quotation marks being used in this particular theme to effectively escape out a bunch of HTML we don't need. But the best part of this is where the emoji comes in, because what should have been an insert into our table with our entire comment stops in MySQL if you do not have certain settings set up, and if you have the UTF-8 encoding, MySQL will give up as soon as it hits a multi-byte character and truncate your input. So this cascades back, so we can now have multiple comments that insert script tags over multiple comments. So no one comment has the entire script tag, so it's all valid. And we can have some mad fun. If you are using MySQL, make sure you are using the UTF-8 MB4 character set, which supports 4-byte UTF-8 encoding to avoid this issue. Also, set strict all tables to make MySQL error if it sees that data that was asked to be inserted doesn't actually match the data that's inserted. Also, a lot of what I've described today, including all the nice code points and the names of things, I've been able to pull up using a nice little CLI tool called Uniscribe, which you can gem install on various platforms. It is quite useful. Regardless of what system you're using, try adding the odd emoji. Adding a single emoji and confirming that it's correctly written to and displayed back can confirm an entire pipeline of Unicode conformance. That, in theory, means that your system will also support all the other parts of Unicode that your users use if they happen to use a character set that's outside of the Latin character set, which is really a good thing that you should have, because it shouldn't ever be a blocker that Unicode is too hard. It's not hard anymore. Everything supports Unicode, and your users will thank you if they can actually use your systems to write in their own language, and also emoji. That's all the slides I had. Thank you for your time. And now I am happy to take questions from this presentation or any weird emoji questions you might have. Yes, Lily. There is a microphone next to you. There was a microphone next to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry to everyone who was online. If you're no longer online, I apologize. Not that you'll be able to hear me. Is it emoji or emojis?
Is it emoji or emojis?
Emoji. Emojis or emoji?
So emoji is a Japanese romanization of picture character. So it is a Japanese word. I tend to say one emoji, two emoji. So I tend to use the singular to define the plural, like sheep and sheep, which there is a sheep emoji.
Thank you.
Wait, where's the speaky home? Oh. So I want to know how I can get those adorable original Japanese emojis.
You want to know how to get the adorable original Japanese emoji?
Yeah, on my computer.
There is a programmer called Monica, whose handle is not Waldorf, as in the salad, who designed a SVG font set of the original Docomo emoji, which you can download. I can make sure I tweet a link to that blog post that she wrote. And you can, in theory, depending on your system, replace your system emoji with this set.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, I gave him the microphone.
So it seems to me that, I mean, I've had endless trouble using things like MySQL in the past, and surely the best way to avoid some of these problems is to just never use MySQL. I mean, surely any other database like Postgres might be a better solution to this. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I actually, now that you say that, I actually have an entirely other talk about how every programming language is terrible. I should absolutely make a talk about how every database is terrible. Did you know the first version of Oracle, the database, wrote but did not read back? That functionality was released in version 2.
What?
That is a true story. Yes.
Minimum viable product.
For those at home, there is an aghast young lady in the front row. Thank you for the comment. I will take another question.
Thanks. I just want to know, I just typed out this emoji. I just want to know,
how people think this means. I mean, laugh, cry.
It's the cry
that,
laugh emoji.
what does that? I guess I found that I'm from China, so people in China recognize this in a different way. I think people usually think this means helpless because you cry without nothing you can do. You can just
May I approach the phone? I just want to see which one this is.
It's the cry laugh.
Is it the cry laugh?
yes.
Okay, so that one is interesting. That one has been the subject of probably, I want to say it's a subsection of the paper I referenced, where that is absolutely the subject of a number of misinterpretations, where someone will say, Aunt Betsy is in the hospital crying with laughter. Because the crying with the streams of water down the face is supposed to be the one that you're going to use. But again, Western cultures and Japanese manga and that kind of thing, like I've had some pretty sad times, but I've never had waterfalls fall down my face. It's definitely like little bits on the side. So yes, I could absolutely pick the wrong one. On laptops, maybe some mobile phones, if you press and hold, it will tell you what the actual emoji is called before you send it. And you can also use, if you're using Slack or Discord, you end up using shortcodes, the ones with the colons, and you use the word. And that way you can tell what the description of the emoji means before you send it. Doesn't mean it's going to be interpreted that way. Cool. There's another question in the front row. I'm also not sure how long I'm supposed to be speaking for. Someone will pull me off stage with a shepherd's crook.
So you had a couple of emoji in your slides that had
Just a couple, yeah.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
That were either like astral plane characters with multiple bytes or multiple code points. What's the longest emoji that you can think of in terms of either length of bytes or number of code points for a single emoji on screen?
So what is the longest emoji that I can think of with multiple bytes or the thing? So one of the things I didn't explain in this version of the talk, which is in my bigger version of the original talk that I mentioned, is about how there's the basic plane in the 1 million astral sea of all the character points. There is the basic plane, and then there's the extended or multilingual plane, where you end up having to use 2 bytes. I believe we haven't gone past 1F, 3 characters, but I vaguely recall that there is a emoji name that exceeds 52 characters in its description length. And it's something, I want to say it's something like index finger and middle finger parted with Fitzpatrick modifier 5. And that's the entire official name of the emoji, and it's the black peace sign. It's something like that. So we have many more code space to go. Please get all your submissions in. Things are selected annually, yes.
The, what was it called? The Zwidge?
Zwidge.
Zwidge.
It's named for what it does.
So you mentioned it's used for like skin tones, but then it's also used to apply a rainbow to a flag.
Yes.
How, is there like a big set of rules about how many combinations there are, or can you apply the flag to a face or a hand or something?
So this is where it gets fun. A lot of the ways that you will insert emoji on various consumer devices, you will pull up an emoji selector, and that will have, say, an entire page of all the flags. But what they are pre-organized combinations of, say, regional country character A, Zwidge, regional country character U, which together make Australia. AU, the ISO code for Australia. They will already be preloaded in your system. For other combinations, there were failed submissions at one point to get, say, more RGB color, like I want a bird and I want it to be blue. I want a bird and I want it to be red. That was suggested but not implemented. It was determined that they should use the Fitzpatrick skin tone color gradient of 0 to 5 to at least do human skin tones with
So I could have a skin tone colored bird. That doesn't seem right.
the skin tone colors only apply to certain sections, but that is what vendors have decided to implement because in Windows, I want to say 8.1 and 9, if you put a cat and a dragon, it would combine it to be a cat riding a dinosaur,
Which is awesome.
Oh
which
my
has
God.
been deprecated since.
Oh.
Okay, now we rise up.
Are you
Bring
kicking
back
me off the
Windows
stage
8.
or one more question?
One more question.
One more question. From someone who maybe hasn't asked a question, or I'm happy to take 2 more. I just want to make sure that.
We still got like 8 minutes or something.
Okay.
Has anyone written a proposal to get the cat riding the dinosaur into the actual Unicode standard?
Has anyone actually written a proposal to get the cat riding the dinosaur into the Unicode standard? I have not checked recently. However, I will say that some of the earlier versions of like the cowboy and the who's seen the floating businessman in a suit emoji?
Wait, what?
There is a floating businessman in a suit emoji that was added because it was a character in Webdings, which was added because the dude who made Webdings really liked this one ska band. So there is a backwards compatibility argument to do there with Yahoo Messenger, MSN Messenger, Wingdings, and Webdings. I want to say that there may not have been enough usage of that character to warrant that backwards compatibility thing. I will also say that if you go to the emoji selection website, like the emoji subcommittee website, you'll have a whole bunch of factors for inclusion and factors for exclusion. There have been more exclusion factors added since I added the parrot emoji, specifically around multiple types of the same animal. I may have helped Unicode stop getting superfluous submissions by being a superfluous submission.
Oh.
My battery's about to die, so can I stop streaming? Cool.
Did we have one last question
Just
before we move on?
my stream might die, and I'm not sure whether the audio will still work.
The audio will.
Okay,
just
so
still
can I
that
close
old.
this then?
You sure
Because this
can.
is going to die.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, there being no other questions, and us having about 10 minutes until the next speaker starts, we're going to switch things over. So if you're at home, have fun. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes. If you're here, have fun. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Thanks. And thanks, Katie, everyone.
Are we still live?
Hello.
Hello.
Are you muted?
Yes. Oh,
No, your laptop muted.
We're feeding back again. There's too much delay. I can even speak loud enough and get through.
What?
How does technology help you?
We've got the right spooky vibe going on now.
okay.
Still echoing.
We'll get there. Don't worry.
Think about this. Nothing's changed.
What?
Except the laptop. Is yours still speaking? No, your laptop's dead. Hello, everybody at home. We're having a bit of an audio issue again. This is fun.
I don't want to repeat myself.
We had those there, isn't it? So I'm going to. Hello.
Hi. Okay.
For some reason, last time that one didn't want to, but now. Anyway, hello, everybody. Well, this is fun. I told you I wasn't prepared for this, right?
Doing great.
Luckily, I don't care if I'm doing great. What I care about is that the speakers have been great. Well, no pressure. The first speaker was absolutely fantastic. The second one is going to be fantastic too. I'm not going to dilly-dally about because we all want to try and get out of here by 8-ish maybe to go for a beer.
No pressure again.
No pressure. But Lily has told me that probably not going to be an issue.
Don't think so.
But
we'll
we
see.
are going to have questions at the end, and we do know that Benno is going to ask some tricky ones, so I'll make sure he gets the microphone again.
Only when asked nice.
For those of you at home who are missing out, come to the in-person one next time.
Yes.
It's a
Just-
blast.
Can
So-
everyone on the stream hear us?
I would say so.
Raise your hands if you know it.
Yeah.
I will go over and double check,
Okay.
because by the time I get back, there should be a comment there saying, yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
And if there isn't, please, somebody type, yes, we can hear you, so I can...
Cool.
I need sign language. No, that was cheating. Okay,
Okay.
I need to go. I'm going to get out of here. You are going to get the hook. I'm going to hand you straight over to Lily, who's going to talk to us about vampires. I need to learn how to speak again. Lily, over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here and talk about vampires in person and stuff. And yes, as Ben said, there will be questions afterwards. If you have got any questions about vampires, please prepare them. So I'm Lily. For those of you who don't know me, I am a paranoid ex-historian and I'm a professional opinion haver. I work at ThoughtWorks here as a security specialist, and for the next, 30 odd minutes, I will talk to you about JavaScript and vampires. And if I have done this right, there will be time for questions at the end, and may God have mercy on our souls. Last time I gave this talk wearing these glasses, and I forgot to bring them, so you get a picture of them, and yeah, we'll see. So, what is my deal with vampires? I hear you ask. I don't actually, but this works. This is actually one of the things that work better online.
What's your deal with vampires?
Thank you. What is my deal with vampires, I hear you ask? Vampires are, notoriously, unable to enter a house unless they're invited in. And despite your best intentions, while you might have been told never to let a vampire in, there are plenty of tricks that vampires can use in order to get you to let them in. We've got disguises and pleas and cunning ploys. And when they're in, they generally want to drink your blood, which may or may not be a thing you actually want. And in the same way, you may sometimes find that the web application you've been building is serving JavaScript to your users that you didn't intend to be there. And what that unexpected code does could be good or bad. There's plenty of good JavaScript, and there are plenty of good vampires. Friendly vampires will hang around the house and be sparkly and handsome love interests. Or really conscientious housemates who organize everyone's chores and clean the house quietly during the night while the rest of you are sleeping. Hopefully. Friendly JavaScript is all the stuff that makes your site work the way that you want it to. It makes your page look nice, or it allows you to build games inside your app, or see how popular your latest post is, or let you chat with other people. But there's also evil JavaScript. And there are certainly evil vampires. In this case, when you find one of these things inside without warning, they can drain your blood, and your money and your user base and your processing power and sometimes your life. The life and death part is mostly about vampires, although I do have another talk about code that has killed people. So we can get to that another time, maybe, if we do this again. Needless to say, most of us want to ensure that we're only letting in the good vampires and keeping the evil ones well away. And this handy infographic helps to illustrate my point. Feel free to take a photograph or a screenshot and print a copy and put it on your wall to remind yourselves. Just give you a moment for that. Okay, real good? Good, cool. Okay, so where does JavaScript come from? Well, when a mommy and a daddy JavaScript meet, no, they come from these places. They will be served in your app from one of three ways. They'll be embedded in the HTML, called from another file that you're also serving, or they'll call from another file that someone else is serving. And in the security advocacy world, we spend a lot of time educating folks about the pitfalls of third-party JS libraries that you might be bundling up and serving yourselves, and about how to sanitize input to prevent cross-site scripting attacks like the one Katie demonstrated earlier. But when it comes to the issues thrown by calling JavaScript directly from some other domain entirely, we don't pay nearly as much attention as I think we should. And maybe you are sitting here and you're all over this and you're thinking, I know, Lily, this is how the internet works. But if that's the case and you think you don't need this talk, thank you for coming anyway, and I hope you enjoyed the pizza. But also perhaps there's someone you work with who needs convincing. And please stick with me, because I'm going to give you the tools and the information and the arguments that should help make those conversations with those people a little bit easier, hopefully. We see a lot of attacks in the wild that happen as a result of sneaky third-party JS. And the majority of the popular ones are done for one of two reasons: mining cryptocurrencies and stealing credit card details, because hackers have no imaginations. Like, seriously, today's browsers can access your camera and your microphone and your screen, which this one is doing right now. Worse things are possible, but no, Ethereum, Monero, whatever. So cryptojacking, by which I mean using third-party JS libraries to mine cryptocurrencies in users' browsers, was fairly popular up until relatively recently, thanks to services like CoinHive, whose entire product was letting you use your browser power to mine Monero. It's estimated that the actual amount of real-world money that was mined by these kinds of scripts was about $20. And in several cases, the attackers actually messed up the attack and succeeded in printing the JavaScript code directly on the page instead of executing it, which is about the level of cunning that we're dealing with here. And it's becoming less of a problem now that CoinHive has gone offline. That's been about a year since that's happened. And while there are a few competitors out there, none of them have the popularity CoinHive did, thank God. But it's still a bad experience for the users of those apps, and an overall bad experience for the planet. MageCart is the attack I've seen most often making the headlines as well. This was this attack that was responsible for the British Airways and the Ticketmaster data breaches that made the news some years ago. There were breaches of lots of credit card numbers, login details for more than 400,000 people. This was 2018, and it cost British Airways £20 million in GDPR fines. So that was fun for them, I'm sure. But this attack is also still circulating in lots of places, despite it not being 2018 anymore, allegedly. MageCart is a credit card skimming attack in which attackers modify existing shopping cart checkout code. Say that 10 times fast. To process the payment. So it processes the payment as usual, but it also sends off all the submitted details in a tiny little post request to the attacker's server, and then they sell them on. That's all it is. And the reason that these attacks are possible is because of how the way the modern web works. Now, here's a statement. It's calculated to make probably about a third of you feel really old and make another third of you think that I'm really old. Back when I was first messing around making websites in 2001, when I was about 12 years old, one of the first things that I learned was that in the primary sin that a web developer could commit was to hotlink your assets. That is, to source a picture or another resource directly from someone else's website in your code. Firstly, because it was like stealing from that other person, and it would cost them a lot of money to have to keep serving their picture over and over and over to your users. And secondly, because if that person figured out what you were doing, they had the power to change that picture to a different picture that said the webmaster is a stinky butthead, and that's all that your users would see. It is the tame version. Flash forward 20-odd years, I know, and we have evolved the practice of extreme hot linking, otherwise known as content delivery networks, or CDNs. A major point of CDNs is to host stuff so that you don't have to, and being really, really good at serving things to you fast. But it's still hot linking. It's asking your website to fetch things from someone else's and trust that they are what they say they're going to be. Most of the time, this tends to work out, unless the CDN service themselves decides that they don't like the thing you're doing, or because they get compromised, or because they were never trustworthy to start with. Scott Helm, who's a security researcher and advocate based in the UK, puts it pretty well, in my opinion. Using a CDN is consensual XSS, and we are trusting the CDN not to do anything untoward. We put a lot of trust into these things. How thoroughly do most of us evaluate what we're using? There are a lot of CDNs that will work directly with you to supply the assets that you provide to your users around the world. But there are also lots of other third-party services, often built on the backs of these same CDNs, that act as public JavaScript repositories that will serve any version of any JavaScript library or anything else in anyone else's GitHub repo or NPM package directly to your site as executable code, and all you have to do is source their URL in your HTML. I'm talking about services like JS Deliver and Unpackage and RawGit. Many of these sites are run by passionate members of the community who want to give other developers like them the tools that they need to make great stuff. But a lot of these services are run by like one person or very small teams who cannot possibly keep up with every single script that people use their service to serve. This presents security issues, not just in terms of file integrity, which we will get into in a second, but with availability. If you are relying on one person to keep that site up and renew the domain that your website trusts to serve it with code, that is a hell of a bust factor. Let's look at Git Hack, which is one of these third-party CDN services. The site's aim is stated right at the top. Raw.githack.com serves raw files directly from various source code hosting services with proper content type headers. Proper. Good and proper. It is true that sites like GitHub will serve JavaScript files with content type headers that are of type text plain, so that you can't directly reference somebody's raw file in your own site, because the browser won't treat that file as executable. It will look at that header and go, okay, this is plain text, not executable. GitHub does this for a couple of reasons, one of which is because they themselves are not a CDN primarily, but also, I guess, because they cannot be liable for actually running whatever random code any one of their millions of users decides to push at any moment. So if you go and reference this file straight from someone's repo, you are saving a bit of time in uploading and serving that file yourself, but you're also trusting that the functionality of that code won't substantially change, and that also that developer or the group of developers with commit access to that repo have all turned on MFA and don't reuse the same password across all their accounts, and that they themselves aren't intending to do anything malicious, which is a lot of trust to defer. Then you are also deferring trust to the person who cached that version of the file to the CDN in the first place, and Git Hack has a beta feature that lets anyone purge cached versions whenever they want. So an attacker could come along and make sure that their malicious edit to the code ended up being the one that was cached. RawGit, which is a third-party CDN service that Git Hack seems to have been based on, was actually officially sunset in 2018, precisely because people were using the service to poison the cache with cryptojacking scripts, and the single person who was running the service couldn't keep up with it anymore. Despite it having been in this state for, 4 years now, I have seen RawGit used by sites as recently as a few months ago. Still there. It could vanish any time, or turn into a bat and like fly off into the night, or, if we're going to keep on theme. There was a theme. I started just a theme. We have one. Look, a bat. Okay. Apart from developer libraries, The other reason that third-party JS ends up in apps is most often because of advertising and marketing tooling. And I'm talking about Google Tag Manager, analytics tools, advertising network spaces to, make back a bit of the money to little spaces that you put on your site. And while I'm the first to admit that I know nothing about marketing, there are plenty of reasons why people use these tools that are not just about vanity graphs. The main issue with this type of tool, and why I'm calling it out specifically, is because these kinds of things often get added outside of the usual developer pipeline. Google Tag Manager is literally code injection as a service. It can mean that marketers are able to update those code snippets directly in the site if they want to. And those snippets often then call on fourth-party JS, and then it's kind of a free-for-all. And this is also the kind of place where mage card attacks are especially effective. People want to know about checkouts. They're going to embed more stuff into the checkout page. It goes on. This is why it's really important to know how to spot your vampires. As a developer, you might think you know what code is ending up in the HTML that ends up getting served to your users, but you may end up being surprised. And I know that supply chain problems are really hard to fix. At some point, we really do have to make decisions, though, about who to trust, or nobody would ever build anything ever because the overhead would be way too difficult to manage. Ask anyone who's ever run their own email server. Can hear the pain in the room. But in most cases, we can control the sources of the code that will end up in front of our users, and this is low-hanging fruit. We should pick it. So in brief, this is how you spot a vampire. You look from the outside in. As a pen tester, this is the predominant way that I look at web pages. Pen testers don't often have access to the source code. We see the app the way a user will see it, and we work backwards from there. Whereas most developers will see their site from the inside out, knowing how they've built it and what checks exist along the way. I suggest if you've never done this, or even if you have but not recently, that it might be educational to take a closer look at the app, the way it is presented to your users. Grab a proxy, capture the outgoing requests when the page loads, and see exactly what you are asking your users' browsers to go and get when they go visit you. Is everything that you are seeing there subject to the dependency checkers and the vuln scanners that I know you've all got built into your pipelines? Or is there stuff there that surprises you, that you've never seen before and you have no idea where it came from? I know that I only really became aware of this problem when I stopped being a developer and I started being a pen tester. And you might have laughed before about things like raw Git and Git Hack, but I'm talking about them today because I still see them getting used in live production websites, even now, all the time, mixed in with other libraries that people are serving themselves or serving properly or serving from a CDN that they're actually engaged in business with legitimately. It's all mixed up together. It's great. So when you have seen what you are serving, you face the unenviable task of working out what to do about it next. Don't worry, I will help you with that. The first part is the technical solutions, of which I am pleased to inform you there are many. I only have, what time is it? Yeah, some number of minutes. We have end of day to get to after this. So this is not enough time for me to explain any one of these things in great depth. There are like RFCs for that, which you can read in, the bubble bath or wherever you read your RFCs. But I want to touch on them so you can refer back to this later and dig into any one of them if you need it. This slide is the one you want to take a picture of or screenshot to go and research later if you actually need to investigate these terms in more depth. There are all these mechanisms that are put in place at the web app and the browser level that will help you ensure that you are only loading the JavaScript that you intend to load. I'd recommend going through and reading about all of these if you don't recognize any of them, but prioritize learning about sub-resource integrity and the content security policy probably most of all, because they are the ones that are the most adept at saving you from this specific thing. In brief, sub-resource integrity is a mechanism for checking the hashes of files that you're loading to ensure that they are precisely the things that you intend to load, and then blocking them if they are not. The content security policy does a whole lot of other stuff that isn't just about third-party JS, but it lets you define a list of domains and subdomains from which your site will accept assets loading. Yeah, I have seen that in CSPs. It can be handy if you have already pruned out sources that you don't trust. And I would recommend also not allowing things to load from wildcard AWS S3 because literally anyone can host things at that domain. Be as specific as you can. The real solution here, like so many things with tech, is people-based. To stop the vampires from getting in, you are going to have to talk to people and come up with a systematic vampire management plan. This is the place to make your case for doing JS right. Talk about the worst case. You can use the notable attacks I highlighted earlier if you like, or just Google for Mage Cut because there's more happening all the time. It's very popular. It's very easy. It's very popular. Talk about the user experience that you're presenting to your customers if you cannot guarantee that the JavaScript that you're calling on is the thing you intend it to be. And most importantly, work with your like-minded teammates, if there are any, to come up with a strategic approach for tackling this, because in a lot of established businesses, it can be really, 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 really hard to make this case to anyone whose sole concern is not security, which is most people. And then, in our ideal, amazing, golden utopia state, we select each one of our vampire guests with incredible care. That is to say, we only include the specific JavaScript that we needed. We would host it ourselves. We'd have a lovely maintained register of all of the stuff we're using and all of its dependencies, and we'd automate our updates and our patches. Nothing at all would happen outside of the normal developer flow, and we'd all live happily ever after. Yeah. Just a moment. But we know that real life is not like that. It's not always going to happen that easily. So once you have done your looking from the outside in that we were talking about earlier and track down what kinds of JavaScript your web is actually serving to people, start looking at your short, your medium, and your long-term goals and your plans for getting to that ideal state. This is going to vary depending on the challenges that you face at your specific workplace, so please adjust these to suit you. You may never get to that ideal state. That is okay. You are just one person. We cannot win all of these fights. But let's see what's within your ability to control. With that caveat, here is my suggestion. In the short term, find out exactly where all of that outside-in JavaScript is coming from. Do you recognize it all? Is it all covered off in your usual deployment process, or is there stuff being added in that you were not aware of? If you're finding that, go and find out who added it, where they fit into the thing, and what their actual use cases are. Empathizing with these folks is going to be really important too. They are just doing their best at their jobs, and they probably haven't realized the kinds of risks that they're introducing. So please do your best to understand what they're trying to achieve. And if there's a more secure way, you can help them achieve it. Does it mean that developers and marketers pair on Google Tag Manager work? Does it mean we need to start looking at whether we can host more of our own stuff? This is the period of time where you should be trying to get folks on side. I don't know, host a pizza night or something. Medium term, trial some of these process changes and adjust them where needed. This is also a good time to start working on how to roll out some of those basic technical controls I mentioned earlier. Although I know that content security policy implementation in particular can be a real pain in the butt, which is why I say start working on and not roll it out right now. By now, you should also have a clear list of what you're serving to people, and at least be monitoring that for any changes and incorporating as much of it as you can into your usual pipeline. This is also the point to start assessing the Cdns that you are using and asking yourself questions about their security practices, their reliability, and so on. Are there any that you can pare back, or you can at least use one source if you're using multiple? See what works for you. In the long term, you want to work towards getting everything using sub-resource integrity at a minimum and content security policies if you can manage that. Hosting this stuff yourself is ideal from the perspective of being able to strictly control the domains from which you will accept JavaScript. Tightly maintaining a list of third-party sources and evaluating new ones as you go will also help you ensure that things can't just get pushed. By this stage, you should hopefully have as much possible under one umbrella, developers and marketers working together to ensure that the scripts being deployed are all serving useful purposes and coming from suppliers that can make reputable guarantees about their own security. And once you've done all this, you'll be totally 1000% unhackable and safe from all vampires forever. The end. No, you won't. No, you won't. Sorry, no. There are still lots of other things that you need to keep an eye out for, and security issues do not end, which is why I have a job. The security issues involved with using third-party JavaScript are one small facet of the larger issues that can occur with making computers talk to other computers, And for better or worse, we are all in this never-ending game of cat and mouse forever. All we can do is our best and keep on top of the risks that we're exposing both ourselves and our users to in the course of our work. I've compiled a list of resources on my website if you want to refer to any of this, or dig into lots of the sources I looked at while I researched doing this talk, because there are some fun stories in there, particularly the one where they printed the JavaScript to the page instead of actually executing. I love that so much. And that's it. I want to leave you with one of my favorite vampire tweets. This is like my favorite vampire tweet. I love it. Thank you for listening. Yes, Benno.
I have several questions, but I'll start with one. Do you know of any tools that you could deploy in your either your CI tool chain or other parts of your delivery thing to detect where you're pulling in stuff that might be outside of what you wanted? So like, you know, when a user visits my site, are they pulling in stuff from githack.com that I didn't expect? Is there a way of detecting that during your build process as opposed to needing to test it post hoc by sticking a proxy in and watching the requests?
Oh, that's a really good question. Part of it, I mean, hopefully, a lot of it will actually end up being in the repos that you're looking at and going through those sorts of dependencies that you've got in there. That won't always
Just
be the case.
parsing your short npm install list.
Yeah, just that tiny, tiny one. But looking out for it, honestly, regex.
Yeah.
I know there are probably other tools out there. This isn't usually the end of the chain that I am part of.
Yeah.
Does anyone else know any? Has anyone used any? Daisy.
Content security policy report only.
Ah, yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, the content security policy report only is what Daisy said.
Mhm.
That is another facet of the content security policy header that you can set that will then snitch to you.
Which actually segues into my second question, which is a much shorter one. Content security policies, can they work down to the path level or is it just domains?
Oh, I think it might be just domains. They can?
Since version 2 of content security policy, I think.
Since version 2?
Yeah.
Okay, she says since version 2, CSPs can do that.
Thank you, Daisy.
Thank you, Daisy. Yeah, the domains, and really, really please define subdomains as strictly as you can, because that's important and lots of people don't do it and just wildcard lots of stuff that is at domains they don't control and domains that are run by one person, which is bad. Yes.
And my last question is, what is the orange dot at the top right of your thing?
Oh, that means that we are being recorded.
Good Lord. You mean other people can hear me?
Yeah. Your words are being broadcast to the internet as we speak.
Good God, that's never happened before.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Can't believe there weren't any troll questions.
Hang on, I'll just give it back to Benno. Oh, you want a troll question?
If you ask me nicely, I'll just done.
If you were to screenplay a vampires in management sitcom, what would the title of it be?
That is a really good one. Oh, no. High stakes.
High
Oh,
stakes.
yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I like that. High stakes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, now you've asked me that and I'm standing at a podium. So my brain's just like, I've never heard of words before. Has anyone else got good ones? Vampire office management sitcoms.
My only other thought was that vampire management plan sounds like what happens when the members of Vampire Weekend grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. But have you got your VMPs in place? That's pretty important. Need them by next quarter.
Do they have the right cover sheet?
Yeah.
TPS reports or something. All right. Thank you, Lily. Everyone, huge big round of applause. Thanks.
Yay! Thank you for being nice, mostly.
Yes. I'm just going to do my one-man trick thing and just walk to the back here and click a button, and then, because I could have asked you to do it, but I forgot. So, but you know, it's easier for me to just do that quickly. And then also, I need to work out a way to do this. And then maybe this one here will work. Last time I switched back to my laptop, everything broke. So you might not be able to see what I'm talking about, but people at home can. So that's the main thing that counts. And hopefully, oh, it does work. Thank you all so much for coming. It's been amazing. Thank you to Katie and to Lily for talking tonight. It was really informative and very entertaining. So thank you for that. There's very little information on here other than how to find out in the future if there's more information, because, you know, we're kind of new to it again in 2022. But if you want to find out when the next event here is, most of you probably already know. It's on Meetup. So superfluous information. But also we do have a next event at some point. But there is going to be one in Sydney next week. So if you happen to be in Sydney next Thursday, there is days, words. There is going to be an event up there again. Katie might be giving us a talk there. And we also have Clee, who's going to be talking about, I should have looked this up, something. But it's going to be amazing. So you should definitely come along to that if you're going to be in the area. So one of the things that always comes up at the end of this, and if you've ever been to a meetup, you won't be surprised to hear me ask for volunteers. So if there's, not necessarily just for speaking, but often it's hard to find speakers because we don't know what you want to hear. So if there's anything that in the back of your mind you're thinking, you know what, I'd really love to hear a talk about X, Y, Z, that's where we can try and find somebody who knows that knowledge, because half the time as a speaker, it's hard to know what to talk about. So if there's anything on your mind that you would think would work really well, something you want to learn around identity or security, let me know. You can hit me up at Ben Deckery. My Twitter handle, DMs are open, or chat to me afterwards. For those of you at home, can't chat to me afterwards, but I'm sure you'll find a way to get in touch. If you do have a topic you want to talk about, then absolutely let me know, and I will line you up for an event in the future. But other than that, I'm going to say thank you very much for coming. I hope it's been an enjoyable evening for you. And we're going to pack up and get out of here. And maybe if you want to join us for a drink, we'll head around the corner for that. Thanks.
I have some logistics stuff because I am now in charge of this venue. What?